Hello, folks. It's Ken David Stewart back with you again, and I'm going to try a new podcast this afternoon. And my podcast comes under several names, as you know. One is the Ken David Stewart Show. One is the Weird and Fantastical Writings of Ken David Stewart. What's the third one? Christian with an Attitude. So, today I'm going to read to you from a novel I'm working on that was previously known as Whisper, but I've got an inkling of some sort to change the name to Street Dreams. But it's the same novel as you've been reading before, but we're going to get into some new episodes of it that I've been working on. Okay, this is episode 12 of episode 12 of Street Dreams. Almost forgot the name of my novel there. No wonder you're scared. I can drive you to the employment and assistance office anytime you're ready to go, Harold offered. That's awesome, Harold. I'm ready to go right now if that's possible. Whisper said. Well, let's get going then. Harold owned a burgundy-colored 2006 Ford Taurus. He had a lot of problems with his car a few months after he bought it. The most expensive repair bill occurred when the transmission on his Ford Taurus crapped out. The total bill for having a rebuilt transmission could come to close to $3,000. Fortunately, Harold's stepson Richard had a friend who was a licensed auto technician who did auto repairs in his spare time when he wasn't working his day job at Seabrook Auto Clinic. Richard's friend was able to charge his customers a very reasonable rate as he did his part-time work under the table, so he didn't have to pay taxes. Whisper needed to go to the closest EIA office as she needed to inform social assistants that she now had a permanent residence. In other words, Harold's place. She also needed to fill out the rent information so that welfare could pay her monthly rent directly to Harold. It was a chilly 21 degrees Celsius in Winnipeg as Harold and Whisper walked to his car. Whisper shivered from the cold because someone had stolen her winter coat. After you take care of business at the social assistance agency, I'm going to take you to Hangers to buy you a new parka, Harold said. Oh, you don't need to do that, Harold. I don't want you to spend your own money on me, Whisper said, as she was still shivering in the cold. Don't worry. I can afford it. You can rest assured there are no strings attached, Harold responded. Episode 13, when Harold and Whisper arrived at the EIA building, Harold opened the front door of the entrance. Both Harold and Whisper were almost overwhelmed by the strong odor of poverty and homelessness. Whisper waited in line for the welfare intake worker for about 20 minutes before the worker typed in Whisper's personal information. After this task was completed, the worker asked Whisper to find a seat in the crowded, foul-smelling waiting area. Harold and Whisper found two empty folding chairs. Harold was seated next to an elderly man who reeked of body odor and was having an animated discussion with himself. Probably schizophrenia, Harold thought to himself. He had a cousin who suffered from schizophrenia, and Harold was very cognizant of the manifestations of this devastating illness. Auditory and visual hallucinations were common symptoms of this chronic and persistent mental illness. To Whisper's left was a bank of 4 payphones. A disheveled and agitated young man who appeared to be in his early 20s was growing increasingly frustrated as he was trying to call a phone number that he had misread. He started to loudly utter obscenities until a burly security guard intervened and asked the man if he needed any assistance to dial the phone number. There were at least 20 people in the reception area. They were all people their society would not or could not accommodate. Most successful and prosperous people would never encounter them and would only know about them on an intellectual level, probably by hearing about the poor and needy by way of the media. Only the truly marginalized would end up in a welfare office. Nobody could really understand the mass of unfortunates except the unfortunates themselves. Some of the most dedicated social agency workers would do some research and attempt to educate themselves about the plight of their clients. However, very few of them had personal experiences with issues like poverty, chronic disability and illness, addiction, and homelessness. People with some or all of these issues helped create a billion-dollar industry. The irony was that the most marginalized people in society were responsible for creating and maintaining full-time profitable employment for a substantial amount of professional workers. Those in the administrative positions made the big money. The frontline workers didn't make a living wage unless they had a strong union. The needy people in the province were in essence responsible for generating significant employment, but the taxpayer ultimately picked up the bill. Okay, I think that's as far as I'm going to go with this episode today. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying these podcasts that I'm doing, you can also follow me on WordPress.com or on the web. If you look for KenDavidStewart.net, you can find me there. On Facebook, I'm under Ken David Stewart. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll join you again in a short period of time. God bless.